The latest conflict to engulf the Middle East does not show any sign of letting up. Israel and the United States continue to trade missiles and drone strikes with Iran. A number of other countries in the region have now been hit. The violence is spreading. Joining us tonight to talk about this and where things might be headed, always happy to welcome Robert Huish, the Associate Dean of Research with the Faculty of Social Sciences at Dalhousie University. Thanks for speaking with us tonight, Robert. Really appreciate it.
Good to see you. Good to see you, Bruce.
Your initial reaction to this, a lot of people are saying, why now? So why now?
Yeah, so it's a state where, Mr. Trump himself sort of has to answer that question very carefully, because the nuclear facilities that he was supposed to have destroyed last year are suddenly, in his mind, a threat again. The weapons capacity for Iran to send long-range missiles to the U.S., intelligence shows that's about 10 years out. So why the need to go right now? And perhaps the real Occam's razor, the most simplest excuse to that, is that any sort of negotiations that Iran was engaging with the U.S. on in Geneva only a couple weeks ago did not include Israel at the table. And Israel has long promised an attack on Iran, of course, extending out from its war in Gaza over the past couple of years. And we look now that it was Israeli rockets that were the first to go in, and now Israel's gone into Lebanon as well. So from the point of view of Mr. Trump and Mr. Netanyahu, both who would be in positions to be persecuted for actions that they've done within their own countries, declaring war and going to war is a way to avoid that prosecution.
So does that mean then this is going to be a prolonged conflict here? This is going to drag on?
I'm afraid it is. And history just answers that question very quickly, in that there's been no successful regime changes from aerial bombardments alone in recent history. I mean, since the Vietnam War, you can look at that, where there's all sorts of bombs dropped there. The U.S. had to retreat out of there. Afghanistan was a on-the-ground war, but 20 years later, Taliban's still in power.
Sure.
And even look at the amount of payload that was dropped into Gaza over the past couple of years, Hamas is still there.
Sure.
So the idea of using aerial assaults and weaponry and bombs to make a regime change is never enough.
Trump has been encouraging the Iranian people to rise up and, take back their country. Is that doable at this point? Is that still doable?
Well, I think the thing to watch really carefully, Bruce, is the sort of images or stories we're getting of protesters within Iran. That if you're seeing people take to the streets defiant of the Ayatollah's regime, defiant of the Revolutionary Guard, with no consequence to them, then that might mean that there's a lack of will to keep going. But what we're also seeing are a lot of big-ticket rallies, especially in the bigger squares, that are in fact supporting the regime. So before the bombardments have taken place, things like anti-Americanism, anti-Zionism in Iran was starting to get threadbare, shall we say. Khomeini had executed thousands of protesters in the streets. That's not something that you can hold on power with. But now that American and Israeli weaponry have attacked civilian targets, including schools, now there's sort of a second wind that seems to be coming into it.
Common enemy there. Common enemy.
Yes,
yeah,
that's right.
The Prime Minister is walking just a razor blade here. He said that Canada supported the strikes on Iran with regret. So what did he mean by that?
Well, I think there's a moral impetus to disagree with the Ayatollah's government. And many Iranians around the world can go on at length to describe the sort of human rights abuses that have taken place under that regime and under that character. But the method of what is now very clearly an illegal war, and something that was not ratified through Congress before the bombs started to drop in the U.S., that's something that needs scrutiny at all times, because all we're seeing right now is by Israel and the U.S. just unilaterally attack other countries. It gives the sense that the world order is now one of force and violence and not rules-based. So Mr. Carney and other leaders in the G7 really need to make that commitment to say that rules-based order matters, and there's got to be a way to resolve issues of human rights and dictatorships that suppress people without dropping bombs, especially when those bombs hit civilian targets.
The European leadership, you can see them, they're scrambling, trying to find ways to avoid getting dragged into this. Could that still happen? Is that avoidable for them?
The big issue, I think, with other countries getting involved is how far this war spreads regionally. And I think this comes from Mr. Trump's either lack of understanding or lack of foresight of what he's just unleashed here. Because now, in countries like the UAE, the Fairmont Hotel was on fire. The Amazon Web Services data center, it was also hit. The Emirates Airport in the UAE, everything was grounded. And you're seeing other countries like Kuwait, Saudi, Oman, they're now at risk. They're being targets. And as more countries become targets in the region, there'll be a greater international pressure for other countries to come in and help. So for example, if Kuwait, where 90% of its drinking water comes from desalinization, Oman, 86%. Those targets get hit, you have a humanitarian crisis almost immediately.
For sure. Robert, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your insight, as always.
Thanks so much, Bruce. Good to talk to you.
Robert Huish is the Associate Dean of Research with the Faculty of Social Sciences at Dalhousie University. Stay with us. There's a whole lot more on the other side of this break.